The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's webinar about strategic planning. I'm so glad you were able to join us. As some of you may know, this was originally scheduled for last Wednesday as the last session of Board Development Month, but because of the crazy polar vortex temperatures, we rescheduled it until tonight. So thank you for changing up your schedule a little bit to be able to join us for this session. A little bit about us. Here at Grow and Lead, we are a capacity building center in Michigan's Upper Peninsula. That means that we're a nonprofit organization that helps other organizations and communities throughout the UP be great places for kids to grow up. So some of the ways we do this is through training, like tonight's session, one-on-one consulting, facilitation of groups, and things like strategic plans and board development, as well as our membership program that allows you to take advantage of some of the resources that we have available here at Grow and Lead. So with that, I would like to pass it over to Chad Mager, associate here at Grow and Lead, who will lead tonight's session.
Thank you very much, Victoria. And again, I want to thank everyone who's stuck with us from the cancellation or postponement from last week. And we're glad we were able to bring this topic to you. We get more questions about this topic than almost anything else. So it really was a good fit to put at the very tail end of our board development month. So strategic planning. I mean, this phrase is enough to scare any executive, director, any board member, especially board members, it seems. So let's start off by defining what is it. So here is a definition that I found of what strategic planning is. Strategic planning is an organization's process of defining its strategy or direction and making decisions on allocating its resources to pursue this strategy. It may also extend to control mechanisms for guiding the implementation of that strategy. At this point, everyone who's ever been scared of strategic planning, eyes glossed over and they just went, oh gosh, what was that? So don't worry, we'll unpack this a little bit. Essentially, strategic planning is a process. It's not just a static document that you create once and forget about. It's an ongoing process. It's actually one of the areas of responsibility given to a nonprofit board of directors. In other words, they should be continually strategically planning on behalf of the organization, looking to the future, planning for the future, setting goals and objectives for the organization to obtain and complete that moves the organization forward. So it really is, it's defining your strategies, your direction for your organization, and then figuring out how are we going to actually accomplish this. Now that we have these goals and we want these outcomes, what steps does it take to actually complete these desired goals and outcomes? And so that's what strategic planning is. Can it be a long, boring process? I've been through some that indeed were like that, but it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be. So if you're looking, and we'll unpack this evening and talk about the various parts of the strategic plan. We'll talk about why do we even want to do it? Why is it important? Who should do it? Who should be involved? We'll try to unpack as much as you can, excuse me, and give you a better understanding of what it entails, what goes into it, and why it's something that every organization should be doing on an ongoing basis. So with that, the first thing I want to talk about is misconceptions, or things that a strategic planning process is not. Two terms that are usually confused with strategic planning include a business plan and an action plan. So first of all, a business plan, we'll start with that one. Often is used for like a startup or a new venture or a new business or new operation. It's kind of like declaring what your purpose is, how you're going to do it. So there are some elements that and components that are very similar and sound similar to a strategic plan, but it's often used to externally share with stakeholders. It's many times, it's probably the most common use, is used to convince someone to give financing or a loan to the organization so that you're starting up. It's a very formal document, high level, detailed, talks a lot about projections when it comes to income, stuff like that. So a business plan, again, usually starts right at the beginning. You're gonna kind of flush out what you're gonna be doing. Here's how you're gonna do it. It's a very high level document, but it's not exactly a strategic plan, which is more of an ongoing, like I said, I like saying strategic planning process because it's more of an ongoing process rather than just that starting point plan. And it's not necessarily an action plan. Action plans tend to be short term, typically 6 months to a year, with detailed tasks and who's supposed to do what. And they're very common. That it should be a part of everyone's work, not just in organizations, but actually individuals. We all should have action plans of how we're going to accomplish our goals on a monthly or a 6 month or a year long basis. We should be setting goals for ourselves. Well, organization does as well. And so an action plan will definitely be part of your strategic plan, but it is not the whole plan. In other words, if you just have an action plan, you're looking to solve things right now, right here, within the next 12 months or so, and it's not pointing you necessarily to look and planning long term, which a strategic plan is typically 3 to 5 year type plan. So it's definitely has that element of the first year, your action plan that gets you going, but it's also pointing for something further. It's helping you get a direction to where you're going, where your organization's pointing to, where you're headed. It's not just about the immediate goals and immediate tasks that need to be done. Now, again, why you need an action plan, because to reach those 3 and 5 year goals, you need those little individual 1 year action plans to complete the various steps and goals and objectives and outcomes to reach the longer and bigger goals of the strategic. So again, it's not a business plan. It's not an action plan, even though it will include an action plan. It could even start as a business plan and then morph into an ongoing strategic planning process. But these two terms are thrown around a lot and misunderstood, that they're not quite what the strategic planning process is. So I wanted to make sure we got that out front before we head on. So here's the big question. So why do we need, or do we even need, but why do we suggest and encourage, and a lot of experts do besides us on a national level, why do we need strategic planning? The biggest thing is it's goal setting. It's not just, again, an executive director or management making your annual goals to obtain your and outcomes. It's actually setting it for the whole organization. It allows people to see where you're going. Now, when you're talking about nonprofits, we have a lot of people, a lot of stakeholders to answer to, including a very important one is our funders. So whether it's grant makers or individual donors or even fundraising events, people want to know when they're going to give their hard-earned money to something. Yes, they need to know what your mission and vision is, but also they want to know where you're headed. Are you just spinning your wheels doing similar thing you've always done? And sometimes the work you're always doing is good, but they want to know where you're headed. Are you heading forward? Are you going somewhere? Do you have mechanisms in place to evaluate how you're doing your jobs, how you're accomplishing your mission? And all these things can be answered in a strategic planning process. So it allows a key group of people to sit down and make and set organizational goals to move you forward. So if you had a need to grow your organization, you could just meet as a board on a monthly or quarterly basis and say, yep, we need to get bigger. We need to raise more money. Great. That's a great idea. But if there's no plan behind it, I bet I could visit your group a year from now and you won't have raised hardly any more money than you did the year before. That's just what happens in life. It's just a common thing that happens. So you need to really plan. And so you need to set goals. You need to measure those goals to see how much progress is making. So it's very important if you're going to move your organization forward, if you're going to convince the public that you are striving to be better, to do more with their giving dollars. It's important for them to see these goals and these actions. So that's one thing why we think strategic planning is good. The second thing about strategic planning is that it does give your hired staff, especially your executive director, if your organization has one, their marching orders. And what I mean by that is the board sets the overall organizational goals and then hands it off to the executive director to actually fulfill those goals in partnership, of course. But I'm saying the executive director then looks at, okay, if we want to get from A to Z as an organization, what do my staff, what kind of tasks do I give to them? Do I assign to them? What kind of opportunities and things do we do to actually meet these goals that were set by our board? So if you're a board member listening to this webinar and you feel like sometimes your executive director is kind of like wandering and doesn't know where to go with the organization, it might be because they're lacking a strategic plan. And board, that's your job to help them figure out that direction. It's definitely a partnership, but sometimes sitting down together, going through a strategic planning process can help you get on the same page and give that executive director the direction they need to know how to best use their staff to accomplish the outcomes you're looking forward to. Another thing a strategic plan helps with, it helps you keep aligned with your mission. In other words, sometimes organizations can get a little bit off course and end up doing things that don't quite match or just are not a perfect fit with their mission. When you do strategic planning, you're going to review those things. You're going to make sure that the activities that you're doing, the people you're serving, fall inside your mission. And then you can make decisions too, whether or not the mission needs to be tweaked or changed. But as long as you're going through this process, you're looking at your mission, you're looking at your activities, see how they align, and then making decisions about which direction you're going to take it, whether it's more towards that mission or potentially in a different direction. I mentioned that a strategic plan can give you the tools to really gauge and track your progress and successfulness of your different programming, of meeting the needs of your clients or whatever your mission might be. So in other words, if you're tired of having your organization just be the simply business as usual, if you're tired of having that and you want to see some forward moving, a strategic plan can really help propel your organization forward because you're choosing a direction, you're choosing outcomes that you want to see completed on a certain timeline, and it gives you something to aim for. In other words, it's like this. A strategic plan gives you the target to shoot for. Otherwise, you're just shooting your arrows or whatever in any other place. But if you have a target, you can zero in on what you're supposed to be doing and getting as close to that little red dot in the middle. So that's why we think and believe and think that everyone should be involved in ongoing strategic planning process. Okay, so moving along. So you're going, okay, Chad, thanks. I'm kind of buying in. I can see how it would be helpful and beneficial. I think we need to be more focused in our direction as an organization. So how do we start this process? Some organizations we've talked to, by the way, Grow and Lead, we do a lot of strategic planning. Just put that right out front for everybody. So some of this is coming from research that we've done on a national level with some experts, and some of this is just from personal experience of helping organizations go through this process. So one of the things that we've found out, a great place to start is assessing your readiness. Now you're going, what do you mean? We're just going to do it. We're going to do strategic planning. The problem with just launching into strategic planning process without assessing your readiness, you might find and experience a lot more resistance than you expect. I have rarely seen executive directors who do not want to do strategic planning. See, they want the plan. They want the direction from their boards. They want that laid out in front of them so they know how to get there and where they're going so they can give the assignments to their staff to complete these things. They want it. Boards, not so much. Because why? because it is a time commitment, because it does take effort. Sometimes it means giving up a couple evenings. Sometimes it means a weekend day or a half day or whatever it takes. It takes time. So it's important that you make sure everyone is ready to do the process, that they're committed to the process. And it's not just the board, it's also looking at key staff members, and we'll talk more about who's involved in a little bit. But essentially, you want to have a discussion with the key players in the organization. Is everyone ready? Are we ready as an organization? Maybe there's some severe deficiencies in the organization that still need to be solidified, need to be corrected, need to have some attention put to them before you're ready to launch into strategic planning process. In other words, you can plan all you want, but if there are some of these key fundamental issues that are still unresolved in your organization, those probably should be tackled first before trying to plan where you're headed for the future. That could be staffing issues, that could be, well, any kind of conflict or any kind of struggle you're dealing with. Might be good to try to tackle those first. So they're going into the strategic planning process almost like on a clean slate, or as clean as you could possibly be, so that everyone's ready and eager to point forward. So essentially, my second point, make a plan before you plan. Yes, make a plan to plan. In other words, just don't go, we're going to hire somebody and just jump right into this. Or I'm just going to take it over and we're going to lead this and just go for it. Board chairperson said, we're going to do strategic planning at this 1 hour meeting tonight. Yeah, take time to plan out how you're going to accomplish this process. The more you do on the front end, to make sure you know where you're going, what steps, the timelines, everything to complete the process, the less headaches you'll have on trying to get everyone on board for the buy-in, get everyone planning, everyone on the same schedule, agreeing to meet. So make a plan. One part of that plan is having a frank discussion on how you want to do your planning process. So a couple different options. You can find someone, contract out to hire someone to help you through this process, facilitate it, or you can try to do it in-house. That's just two options. Now I'll tell you a little bit about both. In-house, positive, it'll save you a bunch of money. There's no two ways to say that. That's so true. The hard thing is, if you have board of directors, which are usually volunteers who have other jobs and other commitments, they might not have the capacity or time to put in to do all the work it takes to do the facilitation of a strategic planning process. Your staff, paid staff, they have their other jobs already to keep up on. So if you turn to your executive and say, oh, and by the way, you're going to help facilitate this process, you just added a lot of work to their plate, which may not work best in your situation or for the organizations. And the other thing about doing it in-house, it could be a possible negative, is that then whoever's facilitating the process is not really involved in the process and helping that discussion or be able to offer, because they have to somehow step back and be a little bit more objective as they facilitate, and not try to influence the direction of the discussion or themes or priorities. And so the question is, do you want to have your executive director, who probably has a skill set to be able to facilitate this, but do you want to take them out of the process as far as giving input when they're a key player? So there's the positive for contracting out. You have a kind of a third party, or you have an outside perspective that is coming in to be more objective, who can sometimes see things that those in-house can't see, can bring some experience from a variety of sources and experiences. Hopefully they'll find someone who's has experience in leading the process, so they've done that before, they know where they're going and how to get you to where you want to go. I guess the negative of contracting out is it can cost you some money. So, but make sure you're weighing both of those. Sometimes it is beneficial if you have someone in-house that can do it great, maybe a certain board member. But again, now you're taking them out of the decision-making or process by trying to keep them more objective. But contracting out can be very beneficial too for that different viewpoint, and someone who's has the time, because of course when you're hiring them, to do the process and take the time to do that. So The big thing, the next part is, also just to kind of give you an idea too here is we have something, we've been starting just piloting this actually with one organization. We are creating a kind of a do-it-yourself strategic planning process. And we're doing it with one small organization that didn't have the funds to do a full out contract for facilitation. And so we're giving them kind of like working packets. So they're trying to work through the strategic planning process on their own. So it's kind of in-house, but they're getting the guidance of Grow and Lead to kind of help them through the process by giving them tools and templates and stuff like that to help them through the process, but they're doing it mostly on their own. Pluses about that can save you some money. You have a little bit of control, but one of the negatives we find, it's a long process. Whereas a contracted one, you can get boom into it and out of it within a day or so. The do-it-yourself one takes a lot of time over time to kind of piecemeal it together, but it's an option that can save some money and something we're trying out. It's not available to everybody yet because we're still, like I said, doing our pilot, and so seeing how it will work with that organization if it's successful. And the last part about where to start is you need to make the time, take the time, commit to the time, and that goes back to readiness. If your organization's board, leadership, key stakeholders are not ready to take the time necessary to do the process right, to give it the time it needs, you're going to end up with a product and an end result that's just not satisfactory and not going to get you to your end goals. So make sure everyone is ready to take the time it needs to do the process. And we're not just talking about just everyone thinks the strategic planning retreat, that one lump time where a lot of the work is done, but there's more to it. There's some pre-work ahead of time. There's some follow-up and decision making along the way. So it is a process. It's not just a one simple retreat. Okay, let's keep moving here. Let's go. So who's involved in a strategic planning process? One thing I want to say is I've seen a few organizations that throw this on the back of the executive director to come up with and create a strategic plan. If that's you in your organization right now, you're going, yeah, that we make them do that. They just come up with it and we go, yeah, that looks good. That sounds good. No, board, I'm taking you to task right now if you're a board member of an organization like that and saying tisk tisk. That is not a strategic plan. What that is the executive director's idea of a plan for your organization. But without the input and the feedback and the perspectives of others in the organization, it's one person's plan. And strategic planning is not a solo activity. And in fact, it really should come from, more than anything else, the board of directors. They're really the catalyst and the key decision-making body when it comes to a nonprofit organization. So as my second bullet point shows, it should include the executive director. Obviously, your leader needs to lead and has to be on board with the plan. But it has to include your board of directors, as many as possible, if not the whole board. Key staff members, again, this all depends on the size of your organization. I've done strategic planning where it was a small staff and every staff person was involved. I've also done some with larger ones where only key leaders of different areas or different divisions in the organization were involved in the process, because again, they were ones that would have to kind of carry out and help the staff accomplish the goals. Stakeholders, clients, partners, let me tell you all about why you might want those involved. You don't want a huge group of people that's just difficult to manage and fills up a huge room. But at the same time, you want to get as many viewpoints and perspectives about the work you do as you possibly can. And so if you can get to the table, not just your board of directors and executive directors, but stakeholders, potentially if your organization has a really good long-term donor or funder that might be willing to give their 2 cents worth when it comes to that process and help give some perspective of why they support what you do, they might be very valuable. Having a client that can tell you, frankly, from their viewpoint, how you do your work and why it's important to them and share that in the planning process. Other partners that you might have that do your work, maybe you partner with other organizations to help accomplish some of your goals. So it really is a discussion between the board and the executive director about who will be involved in the process. But again, having the variety of viewpoint perspectives can only diversify and give you more information on how to make a direction going forward. But a key point is, no matter what, the has to have the ultimate decision makers of the organization. So in other words, if you have a board of 15 and 2 sign up to come to a strategic planning process, you're in trouble, because that's not enough. You need to have more decision makers involved, because this plan will hopefully help the whole organization go forward. It helps the board be able to assess how the organization is doing, if it's moving forward, if it's accomplishing its goals and getting the outcomes that they actually set for it. So you need the board on board. The board on board, that's pretty funny. So get those people involved, but how big and how wide of a web you, or kind of a net you cast, is totally up to you. And again, if you are contracting with a facilitator to help you with the process, they can help you decide exactly who and how many people should be involved in the process. Okay, so now let's talk about the different components that could be, and I want to stress this. These are components that could be a part of your strategic planning process. Why am I saying could be? Because not everyone's situations or needs are the same. So in other words, I have never done, in my time at Grow and Lead, going on almost 6 years, I have never done 2 strategic planning processes that were exactly the same. Everyone's needs are different. Everyone's place in their life cycle of a board is different, and their organization is different. So whatever your needs are, that's why, again, this sometimes really helps having outside perspective to hire someone to facilitate, because they can help you determine exactly how much you need. And again, how much service you need depends on how much you'll end up paying for it, et cetera, or the time it takes. And so the timelines and deadlines and stuff. So I'm just going to share a few of the common components in the strategic planning process. But again, remember that these could be different for your organization if you don't have as strong of a need area, or it could take shorter if you've done some of this. This first one is the perfect example. I've worked with groups that said, oh, we just did a whole bunch of data gathering in the last 12 to 18 months. I don't think we need to have that as a component, because we can just draw upon that data. And they decided they saved themselves time and money by already having data that was already collected, and they decided to go with that. We've had others that said, yeah, we've collected it 18 months ago. It's not relevant or it's immediate enough. It's not current enough. So we want to redo this. So why do we gather data? Why is this important? And what this is, why that's important, is you need to know where you are. You need to know your surroundings, your situation. You need to have as much information as you possibly can, so you can make intelligent, informed decisions when setting your goals for the future. So part of the potential data gathering process is needs assessment. So in other words, whatever you offer to your clients, to your community, is there a need for it? Is there a growing need? Maybe part of that needs assessment will show, like, wow, we could serve 100 more people because the need is there. Our capacity is just not there. So that directly affects the way you plan if you want to try to meet all the needs. Here's another one that's really tough. Maybe the need's declining. Yeah, I can hear a bunch of board members go, what? Yeah, maybe the situation or your mission is actually, maybe we're having success as a community in that area, or the population you're serving is declining, or whatever the case might be. Maybe the needs are not as great, and therefore your strategic planning, which is so foreign to some people, is actually looking at how to slowly cut back because the need's not there. Totally legitimate plan. We always have this mindset we have to keep growing, keep getting bigger. But sometimes, if we're being really prudent and wise and looking at our situation and assessing the need, we can say, oh, it's actually time to, curtail and cut back a little bit. So a need assessment can really help you figure out where your community, where your constituents, your clients, whatever you call them, what their needs are. So also looking at your environment, and what I put on here is competitive situations, is the idea, are there other nonprofits or groups doing similar or the same work as you? And if so, take into consideration and factors that other people. So you have a needs assessment for a certain population, but how many people are serving that population in a similar manner? And that'll affect your decision making and your goal setting, whether you want to launch into a far more competitive, you want to kind of stay stable with what you're doing. It really affects things. So knowing who is out there serving the same people you are, and maybe they're meeting completely different needs, and that's good to know too, though. But if as your client has multiple places that are helping them or working with them, it's good to know that, so you can just understand your environment, understand your community that you're in. And then the second one, the community and client feedback. What does everyone think about you guys? What do they think about the work you do? Sometimes gathering this information, usually through surveys, can be just eye-opening. There might be a perception about what you do that's completely not the case at all. Sometimes there needs to be part of your plan that comes out of this that says, we really need to educate the public on what we do because people are very confused. Believe me, with an organization who has changed names a couple times in the past decade, we find ourselves working a lot on telling people what we do at Grow and Lead. So we understand that that's an important priority to us, is making sure people understand who we are and what we do. And client feedback, again, so important to know that, are you meeting the needs that you say you are and you think you are? Your clients are the ones who can tell you that. Are you actually meeting the needs in the way that you think you are? Sometimes we're well-intentioned and want to help people and do our mission and don't realize that we're not actually meeting the need that we thought we were. So it's important to hear that. Donor funder feedback, critical. If you want to, hopefully you're doing this on an ongoing basis outside of strategic planning because it's just wise. But using this opportunity, this planning process, to find out what they really think about the work you're doing, why they feel it's important, why do they keep giving, why maybe they stopped giving. Again, all this information can help you make better choices when setting goals. Are there societal expectations about what you do and how you do it? Is there an economic forecast? Is there looking for a downturn in the economy where all of a sudden your individual donors or maybe foundations are not going to be giving as much? Just being aware of that. And again, you can't always predict that, but you can look at trends, and hopefully you have someone on your finance committee that's looking at those kind of things and going, we need to be a little more conservative. So as we plan for the next 3 to 5 years, this might be during a downturn. Maybe we need to take that into consideration, or maybe we're in an upswing. Now's the time to utilize this and maximize this opportunity. So this data gathering, again, is a very important piece if you really want to be informed and make informed decisions. How much of it you do is all based on you and your organization's situation, but it is time consuming. There's a lot of work involved, whether the organization decides to do it themselves, which I'll tell you right now, doesn't happen very often. If an organization wants this is the part they want to outsource almost all the time, because it takes labor intensive. So, but again, you can do the planning process without it. But it just doesn't always, have the same oomph, and it gives you a chance to know more going into the process. So the second part is that you can do in a strategic planning process is really looking at your mission and your vision. I think this is really important. Organizations change over time. If you're a board member, depending on how long you've served, you could have just be brand new to your board. You could have been serving. I saw one person told me they've been serving on the same board for 30 years, which kind of blows my mind. But things change. The people change. The people in leadership change. You probably don't have the same executive director maybe you had years and years ago, or maybe that's. So the key people in decision-making places, the board or the executive director, are continually changing. Organizations grow and they morph and they change with the different changing needs or with the community. So having this opportunity to discuss your mission, discuss your vision, and making sure everyone's on the same page still is a pretty big part of this process. In other words, you're confirming this is who we still are. This is what we see our vision for the future is. This is what we do. Even confirming your core values. Here's what we believe in. All right. You're making sure that your mission is definitely still relevant and matches what you do as an organization. Um, I have a client they're working with. I wouldn't even be surprised if the leader right now is on this webinar, probably is, that knows that this is an area of concern. And so they are asking us to come in and help them through a process to really look and redefine or rework their mission, because they don't think their mission statement really does a good job reflecting what they do. So as part of this kind of launching into strategic planning, make sure you know who you are. Make sure you know who you're serving, what you're supposed to be doing. As a board member, again, this is crucial, because this is the thing that you've signed up to be the defender of, is this mission, what your organization's supposed to do. So you want to make sure this fits and matches what you believed it does, and what especially what the public believes it does. And if it needs to have a change, if there needs to be additions, subtractions, reworking of your mission, take the time to do it. Because again, every goal, every decision you make in the strategic planning process should be viewed through the light of your mission. Do these goals, do these outcomes fit with our mission? Are they accomplishing our mission? And so if this mission needs to be reworked, revisited, relooked at, the time to do it is now in this process, before you start making decisions, because you need that mission clearly defined, understood, bought in by everybody, before you can start making decisions that draw upon those key elements. So another process, and this is great. I love working with my coworkers, because the first thing when she saw this slide, Victoria, who's hosting tonight, said, yes, but, and I'll tell you right now, as someone who loves to continuously learn, I love that we have an environment where I didn't take the yes, but as a threat, as her going, you're off the wrong track, but rather as a, this is good, but make sure you talk about this. The SWOT analysis is just one single tool. It's one single tool that you can use to kind of gauge where your organization's at. However, it's not the end all be all. And sometimes it's not even the best tool to use, but it is one that's very common. So you have a discussion with all the people usually in a strategic planning retreat, about the strengths, the weaknesses of the organization, the opportunities out there, and then the threats, those external things that you have very little control over that threaten your organization or meeting your goals. So it's very common. I use it a lot in our strategic planning. It's a great place to start and see what you do well, what things you don't do well, then determining within those weaknesses which are worth spending time, money, effort, resources on, and then which weaknesses just are not your area, not you're never going to be great at it, and it doesn't make sense to dump a ton of time and energy into it. So there's two different types of weaknesses. Opportunities are a great place to explore, because you want to see, is there something you're missing? Is there something, this comes into play where those different perspectives really can help you, because is there things out there that could help you do your job better, do the mission better, more efficient, more effectively? Are there opportunities out there for more diversifying your funding sources, et cetera? So there's always opportunities, and sometimes we just need to talk about them so that everyone knows and what's worth trying to endeavor to go after. And then the threats, it's more just an awareness. Do we need to be worried about something, or do we need to keep an eye on this that could really kind of set us off the tracks, get us off track, that we don't have a lot of control on? But again, there are other tools, other activities that you can engage in to get the same information. So you're not stuck with just a SWOT. Some people hate it. Some people I heard of one organization that took half a day just to do a SWOT analysis. I'm telling you, that must have been the most thorough SWOT analysis in the whole world, because I couldn't imagine doing that long. My personal is I like getting in and out quick, because the first things that you mention usually are the most pertinent and important. And sometimes it's a great exercise to drill down into farther, but usually the things that come first to mind are the most relevant and important. So just in other words, to look at your organization, you're assessing your organization, you're seeing where we are, what are we good at, what are we not good at, what are some opportunities. But there are many different ways to go about getting that information. and not just doing a SWOT analysis. But it's one tool, one tool. Another component in the process is once you've gone through that, you kind of assessed. First of all, you've worked through your mission. You have all this data you've gathered. You know who you are, where you're going. You kind of looked and assessed where you're currently at, and now you're going, okay, so what are some of those major themes and ideas and issues that keep coming up over and over and over again? Because those are usually pointing you to what you need to work on, what you need to set some goals to. So once you've kind of identified what those major issues and major themes that keep arising, whether it's again in a survey or it was part of your own self-assessment of your organization, then those involved in the retreat process can determine the priorities, ranking the priorities, like what is most important for us. And again, this is where we start looking at the one-year plans, what are immediate needs, versus the long-term plans where you're looking strategically going forward and going, all right, what can we tackle now, today, in the next 12 months? What can we tackle in 3 years? What would be the big dream here for 5 years? Should we be? And so you can rank those priorities and determine then from there what kind of steps you'll need to take. But it's important to look at those major themes. This is going to be a big issue to help you rank things when they keep coming up over and over again. You're going, all right, I'm getting the hint here. This is a common thing that keeps arising. We need to look at tackling this and figuring out how, whether it's short or long term, to accomplish that. So the next component then being determining those objectives and goals. So once you've made your priorities and you said, okay, we know what these are, this is it, we need to do A, B, C, D, E, however many you want to tackle, are priority areas for us in the next year, 3 years, 5-year markers. All right, so the first one you want to determine, again, which order, the timelines of each one, and you want to make action plans. Wait, Chad, they're not talking about action plans. Remember earlier I said action plans are part of your strategic plan? Well, of course, there are some things that need to be done right away. There are some things that can be done right away. And those can take an action plan. So you list what needs to be done, who needs to do it, and a deadline, and what kind of resources will be needed to complete those. There's your action plan. So for your next year, the board and the people in the planning process say, all right, executive director, here you go. Here's your march order for the next year. These need to be accomplished. But how it's different than strictly just an action plan when you're talking about a strategic plan, it also goes farther out. It looks for that 3 to 5 years. It says, okay, what are some more long-term issues that's going to need more time to accomplish? It won't get done in a year. We need to work on this for the next couple of years to hopefully turn this around or start this a new initiative or whatever it is, or complete this goal. You're looking for long-term sustainability. That's often one of the things discussed in almost every strategic planning process I've been in, is how do we keep it going and keep ourselves funded so we can actually keep doing our mission. So talk about what's the plan to keep the finances in order. So it definitely has that same list of tasks and assignments and deadlines and resources needed, but it's now looking for the long-term projections, not just for the first year. And again, deadlines are important, assignments are important. Some places that I've worked with love to do the tasks and assignments, and they hate putting deadlines because they feel like they're pressuring people. I'll just tell you right now, and many of you are already chuckling on your side, if you don't put deadlines, good luck at ever getting done. So even if it is 18 months to 24 months out, set the deadline so people know what they're working towards. And that includes any kind of goals, whether that's an organizational goal, a staff-driven goal, or if it's a board goal. Make sure you give yourself deadlines, because deadlines also tell you how well you're doing, how well you're keeping up with accomplishing the things in the timeline that you set. Important part when you're doing these goals and objectives, goals, whatever strategies that you're using, is make sure you have evaluation built in to each one of them. In other words, there's a part towards the end there when you're done with the goal or done with a certain set of tasks where you're saying, okay, how did that go? Was that effective? Was it efficient? Was it successful? Did we get the outcome that we expected to get? And also evaluation it forces you, if you know you're going to evaluate at the end, it forces you to track your progress to make sure things are getting done in the stated desired timelines. So definitely include evaluation. Don't forget about evaluation. And again, at the end, the very, very end, that'll be part of, actually, believe it or not, your next strategic planning process is to evaluate how the previous one did. What did you accomplish? What didn't we accomplish? Because does that need to go back on the new strategic plan as something we work for to the future? And again, strategic plans, the process, I call it a process for that specific reason. It's ongoing. It's not static. It's dynamic. So it keeps changing and growing. Some things you will accomplish and you will succeed. Other things will fail and you leave them to the side. Some are failed to get done, and you bring them back and work on them for the next time with the next plan. But it's an ongoing process. It's not a singular moment in time where you go, yep, we did that once, we're done. It's ongoing. So just remember that. So the next component is, so you've gotten out, you actually have to write the plan. So important part of why do we write the plan? And this is the misconception. Everyone thinks about strategic planning. They think the end result, this plan, is it's the whole point of it. But I completely and utterly disagree. It's an important part of it, but it is not it is not the whole kit and caboodle, so to speak. If the process that you go through of making these determinations, having these discussions, coming to a meeting of minds, hearing the perspectives, getting all the feedback are just important as the actual final plan. And again, the plan's important because for these reasons, you can share it with your stakeholders. It formalizes the discussions and decisions you've made, so it helps people keep accountable to where you're going, what direction. It sets those expectations, goals, deadlines, what you expect to accomplish in the 3 to 5 year plan. It gives you, again, you can formally adopt it. Many boards actually vote, take a vote to actually formally adopt this plan as their guiding document going forward. But again, I'll just warn you right now, if this plan you get done and you think at the end, oh, good, we finished, we got the plan, it's written, it's all done, we voted on it, good. If that's your attitude at the end of that, when that plan is written, you've erred, if I can say that, because the work's not done, the plan's not done, the plan's not static. You're not done. You need to have a dashboard or a system to track your progress. It's an ongoing process. So in other words, yes, you have this document you can hand to someone and say, here's our plan. This is what we're doing for the next 3 to 5 years. That's great. But if you don't do anything else from that day forward with that, you haven't done anything. You need to actually live out the plan, if I can use that. Live it out. In other words, board members, when you guys meet for your board meetings, talk about it. Hey, Victoria, can you switch to the next slide real quick? Thanks. The fact that it's a living document, it's not meant to be just done and forgotten about. You need to regularly review it. Board members at board meetings, talk about, when you're asking your executive director for updates or for a report, you're saying, okay, where are we at? We set all these goals and all these outcomes that we wanted to have. Now we want to hear from you on a, however it is, quarterly, monthly basis, whatever. Where are we in regards to that plan? Are we accomplishing it? Are we not accomplishing it? Because here's why, and this is why executive directors and management love strategic plans. Because the moment you ask that, yes, it keeps them accountable, and that's scary. You know, it's like, how are you doing your job? Are you accomplishing these things? But at the same time, if they're saying, no, we're not, board member, what you do is, okay, what do you need to help be successful? Maybe there's a lack of resources. Maybe there's a lack of personnel. Maybe there's a lack of clarity in the goal that wasn't so measurable, they thought. What is it that they need to succeed? And that's a board member's job. That's the board's job, to make sure the staff, whether it's paid staff or volunteers, has the tools and resources they need to accomplish the mission. So if you're reviewing your strategic planning process on a regular basis, you can determine what is needed by the staff to accomplish the mission and to reach the goals that you set. If you never talk about it until the next year for an annual review, you've wasted a ton of time. Now, not every item in the strategic plan can be reviewed it would be actually silly to talk about them every single month. But you know what I'm saying? You need to go back to the plan and say, how are we doing? Let's have a gut check. Let's just have a check-in to see, are we accomplishing these things? Are we making progress? Now, the annual assessment of the strategic plan is very, very important. And I suggest doing it annually because here's why. As I mentioned many times already tonight, things change. Your environment changes, people change, your community change, things change. Change is inevitable. Sometimes what you planned a year ago or 2 years ago or even 3 years ago on a strategic plan somehow over the passing of time becomes not relevant, or you find out it never should have been a priority to begin with. Strategic plans are not static. They're dynamic. What are you saying, Chad? In other words, do you need to edit? Do you need to amend? Do you need to add to your strategic plan? Do you need to change and say, we're dropping that priority because it doesn't even fit anymore with what we're doing? Or we tried it and it failed, so let it go. Or we've had this opportunity, it fits their mission. We didn't even know about it when we did our strategic plan. We need to shift focus. It's a living document. You need to revise as needed and as your situations or your goals change. Don't let it sit on a shelf gathering dust. Otherwise, you've wasted your time, you've wasted your energy, potentially you've wasted money. No one in this process that does it, whether you do it in-house or out of house, wants that to be your legacy, because here's why. That's what scares. When that happens, when it doesn't do anything, when you don't revisit it, when you don't look and see if you've accomplished what you set out to do, that's why people hate the term strategic planning. When it's not relevant, it seemed like a waste of time and didn't accomplish anything. That's why it has a bad rap. But if you make sure it's something that is a guiding document, a living guiding document to help you to the next few years of your organization, you'll see it as an asset and a benefit and a great tool to use. But it needs to be put into work. It needs to have those 1-year action plans so you can meet those 3 to 5 year goals. So really kind of to wrap up, strategic planning is, it doesn't have to hurt. It really doesn't. So many people dread it. They dread the whole, I had board members, the moment I whispered, maybe you should consider doing a strategic plan, verbally out loud just groaned. Oh, like he had been through so many before, and it was a process, and it was boring, and it was tired, and it was mentally exhausting after a long day. And believe it or not, I've sat in on a couple strategic planning processes before I got my job at Grow and Lead. And when I've started this job, I was afraid of strategic planning until I learned about it, because my experiences were terrible. They were boring and long and draining and frustrating. And I never saw a single result from the 2 that I sat on, that I was a contributor to. I never saw a single result from those big, long processes that cost the organizations doing it a lot of money, a lot of money. So easy to get a negative connotation, but I am happy to say, and I would love to be able to tell you with a few clients, if we can get their permission to share their names, we've had great success making the process engaging, fun. You learn a lot, you can laugh a lot. A lot of people come out of the strategic planning process, and especially a retreat, feeling more inspired and engaged with the organization than they were going into it. They learn about themselves, they know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and they're excited to try to go forward and meet the goals they set for themselves. So it doesn't have to be this terrible, laborious process. It can be fun. It can be engaging. It can be really worth your while. And again, those who then go and work the plan have come back and given us even greater feedback. I'll just give one quick story of an organization we worked with in the last couple of years, that they went into strategic planning process, very active, hands-on board, and they knew in their mind, they told us, we know exactly what we need to talk about. We know exactly what we need to plan for. We went through some of these activities, and all of a sudden, the top priority that came out of the strategic retreat was something that wasn't even on their mind. They did not, the situation, they knew about it. Obviously, they were working on it, but they did not realize how important it was for their organization to solve first and foremost. They did it, they worked their plan, and now they come back to us going, you have no idea. If we hadn't listened and saw, and again, we facilitated, we didn't show them, we didn't tell them, I should say, sorry. We didn't tell them what the issue was. We showed them what they were telling us was the biggest issue and helped them guide to that decision. And they've been singing our praises ever since. Again, we only help facilitate the discussion, but if outside perspectives going, really, do you guys think about it this way though? Have you thought about it this way? And they realized that something that they were not looking at as their major priority was their major priority and helped serve a lot of the other goals. So, so the shameless plug is Grow and Lead. We do this. We can help you. We love to help nonprofits succeed. I believe the strategic planning process is a great tool to help you move forward, to be more successful, to have a direction so that the whole organization's on board, board members, management, staff alike, even volunteers, so they understand the direction and what the plan is to reach those goals and to get the outcomes that you desire for your organization to fulfill its mission. So again, that's about our hour here. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hopefully you'll learn something about strategic planning, what it is it takes to do it, who's involved, the different parts of it. This was really quick and dirty and short. Strategic planning can be a lot more complex. It can be that simplistic. But if we can at all serve you, whether answering some questions about your own process or potentially help facilitate your strategic planning process, feel free to give us a call. Check us out on Facebook or our website. You can always drop me an email, and Victoria will send out this recording and slides tomorrow, and you can always respond to that email as well. Please do take the time to fill out the survey that comes with tomorrow's email. That really helps me specifically know how I can improve what I'm doing as a presenter, but also helps Grow and Lead know what we can do to serve you best too as a nonprofit community. So take a few seconds, give us some feedback. We'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and I hope you have a wonderful Wednesday night.